David, I'd like to make a proposal.
Please.
I want to replace the classic "Thanks Obama" with "Thanks Biden." That's my proposal.
You couldn't think of something more catchy than "Thanks Biden"?
I don't know. You got anything?
Off the top of my head,
Thanks, Captain Stumblestairs or something like that.
Biden.
No, but that indicates that you're in agreement with what he's doing. I'm mad at the guy.
Well, you tell me why you're mad, and I'll come up with the slogan after. How about that?
Okay. I'm mad because...
Sliding with Biden. Because my financial program is sliding down the fucking fiscal mountain because of Biden's...
I know, but that's... Okay, anyway, I'm just going to tell you what's got me kerfuffled, and then you decide...
Tell me what's eating you up,
Can't you do furniture rearrangement?
I just spit out another fucking tooth. I'm pretty... First one of the day. And I'd say I'm pretty reserved at that. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so as you know, one half of this podcast is riding the Guerrilla Gang rocket ship to the moon on AMC. Okay? We're not going to disclose position size or just how...
girth
nervous we are at this point in time, but things were going swimmingly up until
all the way until
Thursday afternoon.
They were going good until they weren't. Is that the typical one?
When Biden opens his stupid mouth and the run we're on just immediately tanks because he says he's essentially going to double the capital gains tax for the highest earners. Hey, thanks, guy. Thanks for, disincentivizing long-term investment because God forbid somebody make too much money that you didn't risk for them. But, you taxed them off the top. They skimmed some off of that, invested it, took all the risk of losing it, happened to win once instead of all your hedgy friends. And now you just want to jack a whole bunch more.
And you got all pissed.
Poor guys. That's why I want to say thanks, Biden. Every time something gets screwed up, it's probably because that old geezer opened his mouth about something.
I don't know about that, Dane.
That's my proposal.
That you just want to blame Biden for everything?
Yeah, I do. Because you know what AMC taking a moon ride means for this here podcast?
Colliding with Biden? You're colliding with Biden right now?
Yes.
Okay.
It directly impacts this here podcast. If AMC moonshots, we're going to have a real proper right studio. We'll be a couple of proper naughty boys up in here.
Gangsters. Proper naughty boys.
Bullocks.
All that bollocks.
But if we ain't got the funds to retrofit the studio, bro.
I feel kind of like you're treating stocks and your portfolio like it's a goddamn lottery ticket. Like, goddamn megabucks didn't hit this week.
Well, listen, Robert Kiyosaki might be mad at me for taking the wrong lesson out of the cash flow board game. But the only times I ever won that game is when I drew a lucky stock card that was like $5 a share. And then two turns later, I drew the card at $30 a share and just banked in. And then I was doing big deals like nothing. Buying my Swiss Alps ski trip.
That's how you roll.
My team box seats.
Safety completely.
All my cash flow OGs know what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's the lesson I took out. Buy low, sell high really quick, and then you're out of the rat race.
Get the F out of here, Cotton.
But until further notice, my existence in the rat race is 100% Biden's fault.
Is that what we're launching in with?
I think so. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 40, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/40. You'll be able to find it on YouTube, every single one of your favorite podcast catchers, but most importantly, over at the website, wmdpodcast.com, where you can drop some comments on the show directly, join up for our email list, stay in contact with us because we are just one David joke away from getting canceled. every episode.
Oh, I like that. I like the fact that you think that I'm going to be the one canceling us when we all know that you're the one that's going to go down a diatribe one day that somebody's not going to like very much, and we're just going to get blacklisted.
No, you're going to get us canceled. I'm going to get us assassinated.
Put it this way. We're going to know when I get canceled. We're not going to know when you get us canceled.
We're just going to wake up.
We're going to wake up dead one day.
We're just going to wake up at a CIA black site with bags over our heads.
Released out into the wild of the deserts.
We're like, you had something interesting to say on podcast episode 384. I should have paid more attention
to Bear Grylls on Man vs. Wild. I know I need to piss on my pants and tie it around my head now to survive this harsh desertous wasteland.
Well, David, with that joyous note, should we jump in?
We are in.
Oh yeah, yes, we're in, but we haven't introduced the topic.
Do it.
Let's do that. I've been
waiting.
All right. So,
what episode is this?
This is episode 40.
Oh, okay.
Said it once, said it twice, and I've said it 3 times.
She's a lady now. Whoa, she's a lady.
So, one topic, opinion piece from the Washington Post, and we got things to say about it because it's kind of, there's a lot of topics, a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous, and so I think one will be good for this episode. So, opinion piece out of the Washington Post titled, "We Should Soon Stop Catering to the Vaccine Holdouts," written by none other than superior intellect. I wouldn't even say she's a public intellectual, but a public opinion maker, I guess. Opinion molder. Jennifer Rubin. Now, I do want to preface this episode for any of our new or returning listeners that might be a little bit more lefty sensitive who think that we pick on them too much. I think that's a fair. When people say that about us, is that fair?
They
go all the way back to episode 3. Sorry, libs.
Since we, started this podcast, they've been pretty prevalent within the media stratosphere. So yes, the whale that spouts the most gets harpooned. So yes, we've been focusing on them quite a bit. But now, in all due fairness, it's time to light up the Republicans.
Well, a Republican who likes to speak for a particular brand of Republicans. So sure, we're not engaging in collectivism and saying all the Republicans are bad, but Jennifer Rubin speaks for a large contingent of them, or a large contingent have made it known that they agreed fervently with her. So Miss Rubin has something to say about, I don't know if she actually uses the phrase vaccine passports. Oh, yes, she does. But she's in favor. Let's just say that. But as we indicated, she's a Republican, and she's a particular type of Republican. She's a never Trumper Republican. So she's like the John McCain et al.'s who were like, we have to save the soul of the party, yada, 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 because, we're something to be saved. Neocons, things like that. So Jennifer Rubin, and it's a short article. We're going to read most of it, but we're just going to pick different points out from paragraphs along the way because the way her rhetoric is very interesting in this article. So she starts with, when the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food Drug Administration announced a quote-unquote pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because a tiny number of instances in which women developed blood clots after getting shot, that's the key part of this paragraph, many recoiled in horror. The vaccine rollout will be jeopardized. They will only fuel vaccine hesitancy. Jennifer Rubin says no and no. Well, she said no and no. So, do we need to even read on?
It seems like she's left a little wiggle room in there. So let's read on.
Yeah. Before we go on, I just want to point out that one part where in the middle she says, because of a tiny number of instances in which women developed blood clots after getting shot. Now, she's just going to raise and dismiss this like it's nothing. But didn't this whole group of people, lockdown masks, everything that the regime says is correct, weren't they the ones saying stuff like, every life saved makes everything worth it? If it just saves one life,
Totes
that's the phrase. If it just saves one life, said Governor Cuomo. if I can just lock the state down and put old sick people back in with healthy sick people, but now they're all old and dying, and I killed about 10,000 extra people, but don't look at that. Hindsight's 2020. If it just saves one life, we were told throughout this entire endeavor. And so now that at least some have died from blood clot complications in one of the vaccines, now it's just a few lives. Who cares, right? Isn't that funny how that shifts?
Well, it's funny how the narrative shifts. I mean, it's hard to believe that those 6 lives weren't just as important as, the other 500,000 lives that were lost from COVID, because technically you could tack those on to the COVID deaths because they got this shot because of COVID. So, I mean, if you can catch COVID and die from a pre-existing condition and a comorbidity, then this should be tacked on to the COVID deaths.
Them dying from blood clots is still technically our fault because we didn't do whatever it took to end this thing as fast. We didn't comply sufficiently. Yeah. So even those deaths are our fault. It's funny how that works.
It's all shapes, all sizes.
So then she goes on to, give some numbers about, people being vaccine hesitant, that the vast majority of people are not. Okay. So she's happy about that. But then she goes on in a follow-up paragraph to say, in other words, no one can blame responsible healthcare officials, right? The infallible clerics. No one can blame them for, quote, residual militant vaccine hesitancy. And this is kind of the first iteration, and we'll point these out throughout the article, where with subtle little uses of rhetoric, she intends to demonize the side that is not in agreement with her or that is not as sufficiently compliant in her eyes.
This will be a running theme within this particular episode.
Yeah. And not a running theme or not a running theme in a lot of other historical examples when it first started out with demonizing a group and then, where it ended up, we have the benefit of hindsight being 2020.
Let's just call it canceling a group.
Yes. So in that same paragraph, she does end it with, the people who are still, quote unquote, hesitant in light of the mountain of evidence and on her side's favor, is these people are, quote, impervious to reason and facts. So again, not calling names, but pretty much saying that these aren't reasonable people. No objection they could possibly have to getting the vaccine is reasonable. So on to the next paragraph. She says, in fact, a recent focus group of vaccine hesitant voters found that some of these people would lie about being vaccinated. The most participants said they would want a fake vaccination card that would allow them to claim they had received shots after Frank Luntz granted them anonymity to speak honestly. And then here's the key part of this paragraph coming up. Given the existence of such self-destructive, selfish, and potentially deceitful people, secure vaccine passports are warranted. So, again, back on that demonization theme, these people are self-destructive and selfish. There is no other reason they could possibly come up with to be even remotely reasonable in their hesitancy that you should probably, if you want them to not be hesitant, softly grab their hand and walk them through it. Not like they're stupid and small children, but because you can acknowledge where they're coming from, meet them where they are, and try to use words to convince them to see it the way you see it. Wouldn't that be nice? People did that?
Well, we used to do that a long time ago, but now it's just straight to arms with every argument that we've ever had.
Right.
For the past 20 years?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, I'm not super surprised by this behavior. And I will also say that I am personally guilty of falling into that type of behavior as well when I'm writing to people and stuff like that but it's not like straight out of the gates like this. It's usually like because I put forward a proposition and they intentionally and grotesquely mischaracterize it to say that I'm saying something I'm not. I'll get, kind of biting with my rhetoric like she is here. But that conversation is not being had. This is one direction. This is, I have come to this conclusion. I am morally justified in every respect about it. And you're either stupid, self-destructive, unreasonable, irrational, insert your terrible thing here, if you disagree with me.
Well, she's already insulted the other side multiple times, which it only furthers her plot and makes her argument even stronger. So if we can get to the stronger points of her argument, I'd love to.
Yeah, they're coming, but we have to keep digging. So in the next, well, not the very next paragraph, there's some text before this one. And don't worry, we're going to post this article on the website for this episode, wndpodcast.com/40. So you can go there and read it for yourself. But then she goes on to say that after making dramatic progress in mitigation and vaccination efforts, committing billions of dollars and supplying a constant flow of indisputable medical evidence, that once fully vaccinated, you have near 100% immunity. Now, on that near 100% immunity point, Ms. Rubin, I'm sure that Dr. Fauci is, head and shoulders above all of the other experts on this particular subject matter, right? Or if he's not head and shoulders above, like Dr. Fauci is, he's a credible, reliable source that you should listen to, right?
Sure. Why not?
Well, if this thing gives you near 100% immunity, why is Dr. Fauci out there saying, listen, even if you get it, and even if it works for you, still got to mask up, still got to social distance, still can't travel without this, still can't go here, still can't go to this game, lockdowns may be a good idea still, et cetera, et cetera.
Because
it doesn't sound like a guy who believes.
Lockdowns have worked so well for California. They've worked so well for New York, and they're working great for Canada, who's witnessing its third wave? Third wave?
I don't know.
Where they've literally issued a stay-at-home order. Yeah, it's going great. And then they pushed it back.
You're never going to guess, David. It's our fault. All those waves,
right.
It's our fault.
Right. It's Florida's fault in particular because we opened up before they all told us to.
Yeah, because we let people go to literally the safest place you can be, according to the science for this thing, where you're literally bathing in vitamin D and UV rays and heat.
No.
Don't go to that place. That's the most unsafe place you can be.
Run to the hills.
I mean, speaking of what, like you just asked me, what wave are they on? I was like, I don't know. I lost count. I also lost count of the number of events that have happened in Florida over the last year that were going to turn our state into a death camp.
A cesspool of COVID.
Like, it's been the national championship. It's been
COVID,
the Super Bowl. It's been 2 spring breaks.
And boas. COVID, alligators, and pythons. That's all that's left. A barren wasteland.
But anyway, Jennifer Rubin, if, this near 100% immunity, which we're just going to grant you, we have no reason to debate that. Maybe you should fill your buddy in on that because he is, I can't remember who put it like this first, but it's exactly right. Dr. Fauci is the number one anti-vaxxer in the world. Well, by telling people, you still got to do all the stuff we promised you were going to have to not do if you got the vaccine. He is having a bunch of people ask, here's a rational, reasonable, legitimate question, Jennifer Rubin. If he's out there telling people that and somebody goes, well, then why should I get it anyway? I thought the whole point of getting it was getting back to my normal life. And if he says, nope, get the jab, life is going to continue quarantined as usual. Where's your incentive?
Well, then also, we still beatify the son of a bitch, but why is he concerned with public safety now? Like, at the very beginning of this thing, and I'm going to keep bringing it up until we, let down his sainthood, he told people that masks don't work. He was the first person that came out and said that masks don't work. Don't buy them. And then he comes out later and says, they totally work. I knew it the whole time. I was just trying to save them for the people that really mattered. So,
and I think you've made this point before, but I want you to finish it. So basically, even if we take both of his contradictory statements at face value, What did he do to us with that little switcheroo he pulled there?
Well, he said that some of us matter more than others. He said that if you're essential, you need a mask. So I'll tell all the other unessential people to not wear a mask. And we'll let the chips fall where they may for them, just as long as we keep the people that are most important.
So what you're saying is, even if he's right about the second thing of he wanted to discourage popular mask use so that he could save it for the people on the front lines that needed the PPE, if we grant that, but still say, well, before he told us that was the real reason, he told us it was this other reason. So he wasn't upfront with us. He didn't tell us right out of the gates, I don't want you all using masks because we need it for the people on the front lines. They need PPE. He told us because it doesn't work. Or not that it doesn't work, but that because people are fiddling with it so much, there's chance of cross-contamination. Like, he had a whole explanation for why they don't work. But that's the reason he gave. And then he Johnny-come-latelys after the fact and says, listen, I may have fibbed to you, but here's the real reason, and it's legitimate.
And then, by the way,
that's somebody you're going to put a lot of faith in moving forward?
Didn't he throw out one of the first pitches of the playoffs, the MLB playoffs that year too? And wasn't he pictured not wearing a mask or pulling it down to sip some beverages and talk to his fellow cohorts? And were they sitting 6 feet away from him?
David, that was like his wife who he lives with, and I don't know who the other guy was. He has listen.
There's always a million reasons why they don't have to hold up to their rules.
Exactly.
And then Gavin Newsom, he was having a business meeting at a vineyard outside, right?
Yeah.
Or with a chandelier hanging from the outside ceiling.
I don't know about the details of the intimacy of the setting. Okay?
All I'm saying,
I just saw the pictures.
all I'm saying is, it was just interesting. It's interesting what is important when they're important.
I know, and it's kind of tied in with what we talked about last week about you can use any analogy you want in defense of the cathedral. And last week what we were talking about is, the use of the imagery of Nazis or the Holocaust to say like, oh, this is why this is bad, because somebody had the audacity to compare vaccine passports to the yellow Jewish star. And, you're not supposed to make that comparison, citizen. But yet that comes from the same people who for the last 4 years have been making every single thing possible about Nazis and Hitler. And I mean, they've called Trump literally Hitler. The point that David was making here ties in equally there is you can use any analogy you want. You can break all the rules you want as long as you're a cathedral member. You have a rational, reasonable reason for doing so. That was his wife, citizen. That was whoever the other guy was, his brother. They lived together, whatever. That's a completely reasonable for them to do. But you can't have 11 people at your grandma's funeral because, anything more than 10, it's scientifically proven that 11th person gives everybody COVID. You don't have reasonable excuses, citizen. That's what is dripping from Jennifer Rubin's column. You aren't smart enough to run your own life. The cathedral members are, and that's why they also have the authority to run yours.
They're smarter than you.
And better in every way.
Well, if they had just come out and say that in the beginning, why play coy?
So she goes on in the next paragraph. Again, right up front, right back to the attacking and demonizing. Quote, she says, at some point, only the willfully ignorant and destructive will remain unvaccinated. So, the willfully ignorant and destructive. Tom Woods makes this point a lot. You can put up the chart of like the county where LA is, and you can put up a chart of like rural Iowa and a chart of Florida and a chart of like all these different jurisdictions who had different dates for their mask mandates, different lockdowns, different severity, all these different policies. And on the spectrum, you have California, which did everything by the textbook. And you have Florida, which basically did everything wrong by completely opening on September 25th.
Or conversely, you've got New York that did everything right. in Texas that did everything wrong.
Right. And so he'll just put up the charts, and you have the charts of like rising and falling cases, and he has no dates, no lines, no nothing. And he says, just by looking at the chart, I want you to tell me where the mask mandate went into effect. And, of course, people are going to start to say, well, we probably put the mask mandate way up at the top where it peaked, and then it just plummeted. That's where it is. Right? The point is, you can't put up these charts blank and have anybody point out on any jurisdiction, mask mandate went in here, lockdown went in here, they opened up here, they did this. They can't do that because the data in terms of the policies and the cases is a complete shotgun shot on the data chart. So what that would tell anybody who wasn't a completely arrogant, infallible bureaucrat is maybe there's something going on here that we just don't understand. And all of the other things that we're doing to destroy people's lives by shutting down the economy, et cetera, maybe that stuff isn't necessary because we're just piling on to a bad situation. We can't stop this thing. So let's not try to ruin our lives in every other aspect of our lives because we can't. No, we can never admit that maybe there's something going on that we don't understand.
They're the end all be all.
They have the right answer at all times.
They're the experts at all times. They got elected to public office and immediately became an expert in everything that is your life and how to protect you from it. That's why that the cancer rate has dropped so drastically. That's why the amount of heart disease in this country has dropped so drastically, because they've got your best interests in mind, right, Dane?
Yeah. I mean, all the time. And not only do they have your best interests in mind, but they are just purely cut from a different cloth than you and the rest of humanity.
Which is why we have so much health insurance and why it's so cheap and why we have the best health care possible. It's like everybody gets health care, right? Because they figured it out and they realized that health in this country is very important, and it's not about the dollar sign. It's about keeping people safe.
Right.
Hopefully you've ingested enough satire for this particular segment and we can move on to the next.
Yeah. This one will fill you up for quite a while.
Dripping with sarcasm.
In the satire department. So we're just about getting here to the end of Jennifer Rubin's opinion piece. And here towards the, I think you've probably gathered already that the gloves have been off this whole time, but it really sinks in these last two paragraphs, really what she thinks. And now, and let me just reiterate, the reason why we wanted to point out at the beginning of this article that she is a very specific type of Republican, the never Trump Republican, is we want to say that, like, when we say the cathedral, we mean almost like a hive mind that regardless of your political preference, regardless of your, different lived experience, whatever the case may be, once you get in that hive mind, you have no ability to do anything other than regurgitate the cathedral's talking points. You don't examine anything critically. You are the blob that's moving around and just soaking up everything about culture and society and forming all of the opinions, and you're just infallible. You are in a religious cult. Because, she's a Republican. She's supposed to be a limited government type of person. And she tries to tiptoe around that line by saying, we're not going to have the government mandate anything. They're just going to have a secure vaccine passport thing that can't be, rigged. We can't have any fake IDs running around. And then private businesses can just deny business. And she thinks that that's sufficiently treading the line, as if we're as stupid as she clearly thinks that we are. Like, a private business in this environment where the cathedral all around you is forming the opinions of everyone around you, and that you're not making a decision to not go too much against the grain and have your business completely destroyed or canceled. We're supposed to be so naive that we don't think that that's happening in this environment. And a business that denies somebody because they don't have the proper passport is just doing it on matters of free market, principles, and that there's absolutely no coercion going on at all. And So to say, both from Jennifer Rubin and people who would defend this mindset that I have a good idea and my good ideas should be forced onto people if they don't choose to accept them. That's a mindset that is deeply ingrained within the cathedral that needs to be destroyed, pointed out, and rooted out everywhere you find it, because it has too much purchase on the collective consciousness. And it will turn your fellow citizens against you if you fall on the wrong side of that line. In this case, vaccine hesitancy.
Well, again, the first thing that you should be able to choose is what does and doesn't go into your body. Secondly, probably more importantly, is that it's not about it. At the end of the day, it's not about the passport and whether or not you've got your vaccine or not. It's about whether or not they can regulate what you can and can't do once you've got your passport that says that you've been a good citizen or a bad citizen. So they can keep moving the goalposts, and if you don't believe me, okay, cool. Backtrack it all the way back to...
We're on day what of 14 days
March,
to flatten the curve?
March 2020, they said 2 weeks, and now that goalpost has moved way past 2 weeks, I'd imagine. I'm not good at math, but... and now they're just coming out and saying, well, you need to do this to be able to travel. Well, you need to be that to be able to travel. It's like, okay, so if you think it's not a bad thing that we should have to get this for a passport, again, it's not even, I'm not arguing pro-con vaccine.
Yes.
Whatever you want.
We should have put that at the beginning.
Whatever you want, it's fine. We want you to be able to get it. That's the whole freedom. But to start saying what you're allowed to do, whether or not you do get the vaccine, now that's a slippery slope that can lead to a lot of other things. That's all we're arguing.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us have a strong opinion for or against the vaccine itself. As a medical intervention, purely and simply, don't feel strongly about it one way or another. If you want it because you're in one of the more high-risk groups and the juice is worth the squeeze, go for it. If you don't want it because you're in a low-risk group or you have other hesitancies, and this is the problem with the rhetoric that she's using about any sort of objection to this is just unreasonable. Like, would she say that it's unreasonable if you are in the admittedly very small, but some groups of people that for medical reasons cannot get the vaccine? They just can't. Their doctor has said, you cannot, it will put your life at risk. Or what about, African Americans who still believe or not believe, I mean, we know it, have a hesitancy because of the Tuskegee experiments. Are they unreasonable? Is that an irrational hesitancy, Jennifer Rubin? Do they not get to, grace your presence and have a discussion with you without being called willfully ignorant, selfish, self-destructive, et cetera, et cetera? I think that's a reasonable hesitancy.
I mean, I wouldn't argue with you. At the end of the day, it's if you feel comfortable, get it. If you don't, then
yeah.
wait.
And so
because God knows, I was wanting the Johnson & Johnson. I'm lazy. I just give me the one shot. Let me get it over with. Don't make a second date for me. Now Johnson & Johnson's been recalled because 6 people got sick. Well, those 6 people, again, tracking back, that was enough to stop this entire thing in its tracks, and for good reason, for safety's sake. So, for safety's sake, maybe people are taking it a little slower and making sure that a Johnson & Johnson doesn't happen to them.
Exactly, and that's kind of why it was important that she started her opinion up with that point, and why we harped on it so much is because we kind of mocked how throughout this coronavirus thing, the Jennifer Rubins of the world would have been like, if the policy saves one life, then it's justified. Okay, well, now I can point to a very specific causal link between a vaccine and somebody dying from it. And then your reply to me is, oh, yeah, well, your chances of dying are so super small. Well, as young, healthy males, our with no, underlying health complications, our chances of dying from coronavirus are very small. Oh, but it's different because we can be asymptomatic spreaders, or we can be this, that. Yeah, well, somebody who gets the vaccine or doesn't get the vaccine can stay in their house.
By the way,
what I spread or not has nothing to do with somebody that never goes out of their house. But I'm supposed to because I didn't get a vaccine.
Your clerics a couple of months ago, I think it was still in 2019, came out and said that the asymptomatic spreaders might not be a real thing. And then a day later retracted that. So
right, but I'm
just saying you guys keep moving the goalposts. You tell us that eggs are good. Now they're bad. Cholesterol's good. But now it's bad.
Right, but the point I'm trying to make is even if we grant every single one of their fear factors,
sure,
and we say there's terrible asymptomatic spread, and that's driving the pandemic, despite the fact that Fauci said that exactly is not how pandemic like this are driven. But we set that aside. Asymptomatic spread, all this dangerous stuff, grant their entire side of the argument. And so their argument is to say, well, if you go out of the house, you're putting other people at danger. Well, I'm not putting anybody at danger that chooses to stay in their own house. They can make that decision whether I go out or not. But the opposite to her argument in this case is if you don't get the vaccine, you're forced to stay in your house, right? Essentially, because nobody's going to want to do business with you. So I'm supposed to be a bad person because people can take their own risks and leave their house if they know people like me out there unvaccinated have left my house. But it's not okay when the opposite is true, and they're basically saying, bro, you just might as well stay home because nobody's going to deal with you if you don't have the passport. And that's okay in her mind. And the government didn't mandate it. So then, she's really holding fast all of her conservative free market principles, and she really has liberty in mind.
Well, at this rate, how do we do anything in our given day to day without the government telling us whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing? How do we call the government every day before we drive into work and say, hey, is it safe for me to drive into work today? Should I not do that? Because, a lot of people die on these roads out here.
I have a lot more chance of dying on the way to work every day than I do from dying of either COVID or vaccine complications combined.
Yeah. Times about, a million.
Yeah.
I
drive down 95 in South Florida. So. Right. Let's times it by several trillion.
An asteroid could hit you on the way in 95. Let's be honest.
And the asteroid.
That's exactly what would happen on 95. You're not going to see it coming, and it's going to kill you on sight. So anyway, that's the whole thing. Is and that's kind of what they want. They want us to look to them to tell us what is right and what is wrong. What can I do? What can I not do? Mommy, Daddy, what can I do? Can I go over and play with my friend? No, he might have COVID, sweetheart. You need to stay inside and watch this pre-programmed bullshit on TV. That'll keep you safe. That'll keep you secure. That's where we're heading right now when you think that Big Brother can tell you exactly what you can and can't do, and then you go out and police the rest of your society to Big Brother's standard. Put your mask up. Why is it below your nose? What are you doing here? Why is it...
Show me your papers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we went totally Manichaeanism right there.
Now, we kind of jumped out ahead of her second to last paragraph.
Oh, shit.
So, we may reiterate some points. But, she says, quote, the ornery holdouts won't be mandated by the government to get shots.
Ornery little shits.
Yeah, you silly little gooses. They won't be mandated, right? So her conservative card is still intact. But they should not be able to enjoy, and her language is key here, they should not be able to enjoy the benefits, privilege, and access that responsible Americans have earned by getting vaccinated. Now, we talked about it in a previous episode, and we alluded to it earlier in this episode where somebody used the example of the yellow Star of David as, for this vaccine passport stuff. And they're just the worst people ever because they used it against the cathedral instead of in favor of it. Now, when she says they should not be able to enjoy the benefits, privilege, privileges and access that responsible Americans have earned by getting vaccinated. Now, whether she wants to think of it like this or not, her words alone have said, I'm creating two classes of citizens here. There's a class of the rule followers who get access to all these quote unquote benefits, privileges, and access, which, it's interesting. She leaves the word rights out of that sentence when she basically mentions everything around it, to kind of say, you know what? You're free in America, but you're not as free as others because you don't follow the rules.
But
you're
you
irresponsible.
Free?
You're ornery.
If you have restrictions to your freedom, are you truly free? Or are you allowed to do certain things and not allowed to do? Because true freedom is the freedom to do anything you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe certain words in our Constitution say that we are born with those freedoms. Not that they're privileges, not that we have to get a couple of shots in our arms to get it, not that we have to adhere to a certain standard, but that we're born with it.
Yeah, I think there's this radical concept. This is Schoolhouse Rock version of U.S. history. So
I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill.
You don't even have to be dumb enough to read a Jennifer Rubin article and think that there was something intelligent in it to know that kind of the whole reason that the colonists shot at redcoats was because they had this radical concept of inalienable rights that were granted to you by virtue of your birth as a human being, and no government gave you those rights, and therefore no government has any authority you cannot take away what you did not give. And so this whole concept, now, like I said, she tiptoes around not using rights in that sentence, but she did, refer to quote unquote freedom, as she puts it in scare quotes, and that you don't have rights in this regard. She's really tiptoeing that edge hardcore in terms of saying your rights are whatever we say they are. Whether they be the opinion molders at a major, news outlet like hers, or whether they be in power like Fauci or whatever the case may be. Like, your rights are narrowly defined in the way that we say they are, or the way that you can exercise them. That's a dangerous precedent. And that's something that, again, the people that started this country shot at people over. So
we're not saying to go out and shoot people over it.
No, we're not. This is purely an American history lesson in case Jennifer Rubin, didn't know it.
Well, it's like they think that we're dumb enough to fall for it too. She thinks that we're dumb enough not to hear what she's really saying. Like, she said privileges. She said all the things tiptoeing around the actual word rights and freedom. But she's saying all but. Like, I don't know about you, but I made it through 5th grade pretty easily. So I don't think that you're going to just tiptoe around saying a word. It's like when you're a kid and your parents are talking in front of you and they go, well, should we send little David to BEDTIME? And yeah, you couldn't spell it, but you're like, all right, I know they're about to fuck with me.
I've seen this before where they start naming just specific letters and then something I don't like happens.
They start saying all the letters of the alphabet and then all of a sudden I get screwed. So that's all I'm saying. It's like, you don't have to tell me what you're going to do. I can see what you're going to do.
Yeah. I was kind of alluding to this earlier, but I didn't close the loop on it, is, her and people that would defend this opinion piece were like, I don't see any force in here. I don't see where she said that the government should mandate anything. This is just private businesses choosing not to do it. And the point, that we're making is like, these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. It wasn't that long ago where very few states had legalized cannabis, and some legitimate businesses set up in those states, and they allowed transactions to happen with cryptocurrency. And the government basically did a wink, wink, nod, nod to the banks and said, hey, we feel a certain way about cryptocurrency, and we really, as the feds, don't like the fact that you've let legalized weed happen in your state. It's still federally illegal. Just throwing this out there, banks, if you choose to allow these businesses, these legitimate legal businesses, to have bank accounts in your banks, if you process their transactions, if you serve them in any way, maybe we might look a little bit harder in terms of the regulatory enforcement on your bank. Now, yes, Jennifer Rubin and your defenders, that's not explicit, overt government mandating the businesses to not transact with some people. But it's kind of like the gun to the head, make me an offer I can't refuse kind of scenario. Is it truly voluntary? Is it truly a just organic free market action that a private business says, man, the cathedral's really coming down hard around me and on all fronts about this vaccine passport and not letting people in that have it.
By the way, it doesn't
should
all
I
come
do that
down
or
to
not?
It doesn't all come down to their head. How many people have asked you whether or not you've gotten your vaccine yet? Or whether or not you've signed up for it? How many people have asked you how you feel about it? How many people have said, well, I got mine, why won't you get yours? Like, because I don't want to be Jay and Jade. I don't want to be Johnson and Johnson. I don't want there to be 3 months later and then, oh, well, there's something that we didn't see within it, and now there's an unforeseen circumstance that now you can't reproduce or some shit.
Or
like
I have
that.
a medical condition that says that I can't have it.
Or I haven't got checked out by a doctor in a long time, and I might have a medical condition that, because I can't afford health insurance in this goddamn country.
Or I've read a history book, like for 5 minutes, about trusting the government to not
A, B, C, or
do
D,
X, Y,
or
Z.
E. All of the above. It doesn't matter what the hell your choice is. The simple fact is that you still have a choice. Like, yes, there's a reason that you get a polio shot. There's a reason that you get a smallpox vaccine. Yes, for all those things. When was a flu shot mandatory? When did they ever make flu shots mandatory? It's dangerous. The flu is dangerous. And again, I'm not equating this. This is more aggressive than the flu, but it has all the symptoms of the flu.
Well, and aggressiveness of it aside.
And where does it stop, though? Where does it stop?
Right.
Again, with the goalpost moving. Like, they're already saying there's new strands. And what are they doing with the new strands? They're blaming the people that don't get the vaccine for the new strands.
Right.
It's like, okay, so you're not making this a choice at this point. You're making it my fault now that more people are getting this disease.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just calling me, what do you want to call it, Dane? Do you want to call me a domestic terrorist because I'm spreading more? Like, it's only so far removed from what they're saying.
You don't
already.
have to open the domestic terrorist Pandora's box door too far to look at what the definition of a terrorist is under the Patriot Act. The whole reason for the vagueness of the definition is for the perpetuality of the war.
Going back to last week, the Stalin phrase, you show me the man and I'll find you the crime. Like, that's the name of the game. Like, just show me him and I'll find something he's done wrong.
Right.
Here we are.
And I mean, just the last point on the whole, private businesses aren't making a decision not to serve consumers in a vacuum is the episode that we did a while ago about Gina Carano getting canceled. That's what she got in trouble for was drawing a connection between when one group of citizens in society demonizes another group to the point that they justify doing very bad things. You didn't need a brown shirt standing at every door ready to harass people in Nazi Germany. The citizens did it on their own accord because they built up in their mind that this other group was undesirable for whatever reason. We know what their reasons were, and what we're saying here is the reasons aren't too far removed when you look at the rhetoric dripping from her column, the disdain in every syllable that she writes for people who refuse to fall in line as she has decided they should. These people are less than, they're destructive, they're selfish, and they're willfully ignorant, and everything we went through throughout this article. They're undesirables. they're not to be negotiated with.
They need to be cast out.
Right. And so, I mean, that's not a behavior of...
How the fuck are we still here? We keep thinking that we're such an evolved species.
Oh, yeah.
We keep thinking that, like, we have all this technology around us. We have all the information that we could ever possibly want in our palm or in our pocket at any given time that will tell us all the lessons that we've learned throughout the annals of history. Yet, we continue to behave the exact same way we did in 1939, in 1915, in 1415, all the way back to when we were cavemen, beating people over the heads and dragging them into our caves to do with them what we will. We are still just as animalistic. We are still just as tribal. We are still just as devout of empathy for our fellow men or understanding of a different position as we were back then. Despite how woke we were, even though we finally canceled Looney Tunes, the bane of our existence, that led us down such a dark path of rape culture and bigotry and anti-homophobianism. I don't even know why we canceled them. But moving on, it's a good thing we're fast-tracking the very important things in our history instead of repeating them over and over and over again.
Well, as we approach the hour mark of this episode, I guess you'll be happy to know that we are on the last paragraph of her column. And I'm going to try to keep closing thoughts brief after this paragraph, and then get into the outro, because we all know that you're ready to get your faces melted off by that outro music. So she starts the last paragraph with, I think, is rather interesting. She says, "There is no right to remain a breeding ground for dangerous coronavirus variants or a threat to the small number of people still susceptible to the virus, despite their vaccinations." Now, you know what, Jennifer? You might be right. There is no right for me to be a breeding ground for other people, that regardless of whether they have a vaccine or not, they can stay in their house just as much as you want to force me to. But I would say turnabout's fair play. The pen is mightier than the sword, is it not, David?
Well, that's what I've been told.
So if she's going to be a veritable breeding ground...
By the way, she did finally come out and say what she was really meaning. The right. She finally said that she's trying to take a right away from us. Albeit that she shat all over.
No, she's saying the right doesn't exist.
Exactly. But she's taken away the right for you.
Right. So, I would say, Jennifer, that the pen being mightier than the sword, you don't have a right to be a breeding ground of such vitriolic hate of people who just won't fall in line with what you think is a good idea. And you're willing to magnify that voice to kind of, rile up the people that do agree with you, to get more intense, get more vicious, because these are willfully ignorant, self-destructive, selfish people, go down her laundry list of pejoratives. So go out there, dutiful reader.
Where'd she get elected from?
She's just an opinion columnist at the Washington Post.
Oh, that's great. So
she's a literal nobody. I mean, she's more somebody than us, because
we're just shouting
getting
in the wind.
there.
We're shouting in the wind right now.
We're Don Quixote. We're tilting that windmill.
But again, kind of moving forward and through it,
I say screw it. At this point, we owe him an hour.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Oh, I wasn't going to pull up short. We stay to the job's done.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. She's a Republican columnist that's arguing to take more rights away when...
No, she's saying you don't have them.
Oh, that's right. No, we have to earn... No, hold on. No. That's not what she's saying either. She's saying we have to earn them back. Remember, by getting the jab and the arm.
We have to earn the benefits and privileges.
We have to earn the benefits, privileges, and phrase it however the hell you want. She's saying that we don't have them now. and we have to earn them back by being good little boys and girls.
You get the good things. You get the cool things you get the good things that the cool kids get as soon as you follow the rules. Show that you're obedient citizen.
Are we the only... I feel like we're the crazy people now. I feel like we're the crazy people because we're the only ones that take exception. Like, hey, doesn't this sound a little fucking nuts to you guys? And then they're like, no, well, why didn't you get the vaccine? It's like, because I have legitimate concerns.
David, haven't you listened to her article? We are militant vaccine hesitants. We are impervious to reason and facts.
You know what the one thing?
We are selfish and self-destructive. We are willfully ignorant. We are honorary holdouts.
Psychologically speaking.
That's us, Dave.
Psychologically, you know what makes me want to do the thing that the other person is doing? When they ridicule me, insult my intelligence, call me everything but a terrorist within my own country because I might have some qualms about what goes into my body. You know what? You're right. I'm a piece of shit. I'm the lowliest thing that's ever happened to the Americas ever. I'm including the South Americas, by the way. So, like, everything that you just accused me of is factually accurate. Let me go get that jab in my arm and find out 6 months later that it totally mutated my DNA and we're going to be Cronenberged in about 3 months.
Or, David, sticking with the cathedral meme, you have an original sin, citizen. You were walking around in a dangerous environment that made you dangerous to others. And now, if you get the baptism of the vaccine, we can wash that sin away from you. And now, even though it's not 100% effective, and even with the vaccine, you can still get sick. It just won't be as bad. You can still pass on to others, but I don't know. I forget what the follow-up for that one is. You can, what were all the other things? You still got a mask. You still got a distance. You still, let's just suffice to say, even if with the vaccine, you still have all the bad stuff. But, citizen, listen.
Hold on. But Joe Biden said.
Hold on. You still went through the rite. You went through the ritual. You were baptized, citizen. So whatever happens after that, you are
what a fucking shitty prize.
You are forgiven.
What a shitty prize at the end of it. All right, if you make it through this trial and you forego all of your free will, you get this sweet little ribbon that you can tie around your wrist that says I was a good little boy or girl. And as a tack on treat, we didn't have to give you this, but because you're so special, you might get to celebrate 4th of July with like 3 people. What a reward. Sign me up. Can I go twice? Can I go twice? Oh wait, I get to go twice because the vaccine requires 2 times that I have to get in line? Wassa. Wicked wassa.
And David, do you want to hear what she closes with, her last sentence?
Can you bring this whole menagerie to a crescendo?
I can. And just to, really push it over the edge and show you, dear reader, that this is a...
Reader? Are they reading our words right now?
Well, they're probably going to go to www.podcast.com/40. Go to the show notes page.
Don't go to 39. Actually, you know what? Go to 1. And then listen all the way until you get to 40.
And share every one of them as you go. She says this. She says, quote, "We have all sacrificed too much for too long to indulge reckless conduct." I think you could take that sentence out and you could plant it right back at the Salem witch trials and you could go, listen, everybody, we're over here half starving to death. We can't do anything fun. Our lives are miserable. But we work sun up to sundown. It's all because of these
witches. These witches that dance in the forest. Don't you understand?
We don't do anything. And we take all these sacrifices to live right. And these witches are over here doing God knows what.
Oh, you know what they're doing.
Burn them.
With John Smith out in them forests dancing around a campfire. That's not all they were doing.
So
demons were involved. Animalistic rituals.
I think Jennifer Rubin would be right at home.
Despite her last name being also shared with a delicious sandwich, I don't like her at all. It seemed like she made a lot of accusations. It seemed like she talked to nobody. I was like, I feel like if she talked to one person that said, okay, maybe not one person, maybe like talk to 20 people and take on college campuses and abroad. Don't just go to like a rally for, some gopher hole, whatever. But all I'm saying is, for a slightly intelligent person to have a conversation with them and to really listen to them, to say, hey, I just want to see some data. I want to see some plot points before I inject it into my arm. I care about my health. I'm not in an at-risk group, if we want to be honest with ourselves. I just want to wait and see before I go get the jab. I will probably get it, or I won't. One of the two, but that is my choice. But I just want to wait and see before all of a sudden there's a Fauci meeting going, well, you're going to have to put on about 27 masks now, because if you catch COVID, you're going to turn into some ghastly ghoul that has 3 eyes, 2 foreheads, and about 74 arms sticking out of them. So we kind of messed up the arm, but masks are important.
David, you know what? That statement, that story that you just told, just drips with being impervious to reason and facts.
I'm just an asshole. I just want to see. I want to see all the grandmas that aren't mine.
You're completely unreasonable,
because I'm a little scared about getting blood clots sent to my head, which will actually kill me, whereas COVID might not. And by might not, I mean I've got a 0.3% chance.
Your lack of reason notwithstanding.
Oh God, I'm a terrorist. Just call me a terrorist. Just call it.
Have we sufficiently responded to Miss Rubin? Do we have anything else to say?
Can you be a little nicer next time, Miss Rubin? Maybe write about cupcakes.
And I want to say, listen, lady, you're not slick.
Listen, lady.
You
tell him, Dane.
Yeah, you're not slick. Anyway, where can you find this episode? wmdpodcast.com/40. Any podcast catcher, definitely on YouTube. Like and subscribe so you always get notifications when we have another video go live. Because over at YouTube, which is the only platform we have available this extra content right now, you'll get these episodes, but we also, every Wednesday night on the Stereo app, if you don't have it, go to Google Play Store or your Apple Store, and download the app Stereo. And search for WMD_Dane or WMD_David, preferably both. Subscribe to both. We do a weekly live episode starting at 7 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday nights, and they go to 8 to 8:30. That extra content can also be found at YouTube.
Actually,
if you can't get the Stereo app.
If you don't like what we're saying here, just come on over there. You can comment while we're having a conversation. We try to get through all the comments that we possibly can, and we'll just hear a random comment about an episode that it'll be kind of funny for us. Please tell us how much you dislike us live and in living color.
Yeah.
For 5 listeners. And
so far, we're getting better. Shut your mouth, David. Why you always have to like cut yourself down in the eyes of the customer?
Because they have to know.
They need to know. This
isn't just a role that I'm playing. I truly do hate myself, and you should too. I'm on your side. I hate me too. My voice, it sounds like I'm sucking like am I talking around a jawbreaker? I don't know.
You sound like what do you sound like?
I sound like I'm from London.
No. So, somebody said on one of the early episodes, you sound like a duck.
I sound like a pineapple. I was like, the fuck? Maybe it was a pineapple. Maybe if it was a raisin, like it sticks out in my head to this day.
I had so many questions. If
you're gonna critique, can it be constructive? Not some like third, fifth dimensional attack on my vocal patterns that takes an inanimate object and gives it a voice. And if you're going to do that, can it already exist like one of those raisins from the 1970s with like little trumpet and they were jazz people?
Yeah, I think
That's all I'm saying.
I think that's a good place.
If you're going to insult me, do it properly.
Should we end?
That's all I'm saying.
We should
Monsters
please
Inc.
end.
Monsters Inc.
Okay.
Mike Wazowski.
Anyway, catch us at all those places. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram.
Baffling.
TikTok.
Baffling.
Find us, like us, share us, subscribe to us.
Share us. Put us in your mouth.
We love you.
Bye-bye.